Hi everybody, welcome to video number 9, setting up my Cessna 172, the steam gauge version, using Axis and Ohs, and this time using my throttle quadrant. It's the Honeycomb throttle quadrant, which I hate saying. Again, I'm trying to use a template, so I'm going to create a template for this particular setup. If I've got an aircraft that's got exactly the same setup, I can just apply that template. If it's close, I can apply the template, edit it and resave it with a different name, so it'll hopefully speed up my development. And I want to use the Microsoft input events as much as possible. So this is a photograph of the layout. So I've got my throttle quadrant here, and on top of that I've got my X-Touch Mini. I've managed to screw some brackets. It comes with a set of screws and holes there. And I found these metal brackets that have been left over from a kitchen fit, actually. So I've screwed those in here. These are kind of a C-shaped bracket, so they go up behind the unit as well, so it sits on top quite nicely. This is the throttle, the quadrant here. So it's got these buttons here and a multi-selector switch and a rotary, and that's all for the autopilot, the various modes of the autopilot, and the values that you can change, like the heading, altitude. You select that here, rotate this, and it increases or decreases. So I'm leaving that in as it stands. These buttons here are unallocated. You can make them do whatever you want to do. So this label just reminds me of what they're supposed to do. There's the flaps increase and decrease lever, the various levers and throttle quadrants that you can add to it, gear up, gear down, and the trim wheel. So that's what we've got available to us. Let's get into the cockpit and have a look at what Axis and Ohs can do for us. I'm going to bring a camera into the top right hand side so you can actually see where I'm talking about, and I can point to bits and pieces. That'll be useful for us. What I've done is I have gone into the control options. Obviously when you plug it in, it discovers, it's just plug and play, it discovers you've got a throttle quadrant and makes lots of allocations. But I don't want to have the axes on here. I don't want to have these levers on there because that's going to vary from aircraft to aircraft, and I don't want anything to do with the switches on there. Again, that can change. I'm leaving these in, so I'm leaving the autopilot in. I'm leaving the flaps in. Most of that'll work quite handily with the GA aircraft. The jets have a flap lever which you can allocate to a different place there, and I don't think some don't use that, so you can use the lever instead. So I've left that in here on the surfaces, increase and decrease flaps there. All this is really autopilot stuff. The landing gear, again, that just does gear up and gear down, so that's not going to vary between aircraft. It's just not going to work with fixed gear aircraft. So all of that I'm just leaving in. So I hope that makes sense. That's kind of what's common to all the aircraft, and I've taken out the bits that vary between the aircraft. So obviously when you change that, you have to give it a name. So no axes, no switches is what I've called it. So in here, let's have a look at Axis and Ohs. This is the template that I've created and saved. So just load that in. I'll just kind of walk you through it. Obviously we need to allocate these axes for the throttle and for the mixture. So this will be blank to start with, and you click on here and it will open a window like this, and you select from here that you want to control throttle 1, move the lever, and it detects which device and which way you've moved it. What you do need to change is you must change this to 0. It'll be -1 by default. It's going to assume that the lever has a 0 point in the middle, and you're going to go below 0 and above 0, and you're not. You want it to start with 0 right down the bottom. So change it so the range is from 0 to 1, and then click save, and that's done. And exactly the same for the mixture. again, the mixture has got to go from 0 to 1. So that's allocated for this aircraft. Let's go across the buttons in order. So the first one across here is my fuel pump, and it's in the off position at the moment. So this is fuel pump off. So I would program the fuel pump on first, because I'm going to switch it to on. It detects when you change it. So if we look at fuel pump on, there's the command, and the value is a 1 here. So we select that from here, and it is actually one of these Microsoft input events, which you can narrow down by typing in a filter. And then we go into our input events, and you'll find there's fuel pump 1. So just double click on that, and that'll put that in here for you, and it'll put the 1 automatically. Then you would flick this switch into position so it knows which button you're talking about. It will find that it's 33. I've given it a custom label just so it's clearer to me what it does, and then click save. I won't change this one here. The fuel pump off is the same command but with a 0 here, and you change that value just by rolling your mouse wheel. Again, flick the button into position so that it detects that it's button 34 that you want to use. Give it an optional custom label, click save, and that's done. So that's the fuel pump. The next one is the pitot heat. Again, it's got its off and its on. It's in the off mode at the moment, but it's exactly the same idea, that you find it and make sure it's 1 for the on and 0 for the off version. Move it, change the button so that it knows which one you want to do, and give it a label. It's again, let's filter for it. It's again a Microsoft input event. So it's called de-ice pitot 1, but my label, my custom label, pitot on and off. Okay, so working our way across. This one here is labelled OBS source, and that's not part of, I didn't make that part of the throttle template. I made it part of the cockpit template. Doesn't really make much difference, but that was allocated in another video. And I'll make links to all the other videos in the description below here, so that you can jump from one to another as you need to. So that's the OBS source, because that's not common to every aircraft. That's very aircraft specific. These are common. You can have a fuel cutoff and you can have a parking brake. The fuel cutoff is down here. So my fuel cutoff, I've called it in and out. That's pulled out at the moment. If I move this button here, you can see that it moves in and moves out. So just to make it really clear to me, I've called it fuel cutoff out, and that's what you search for. You search for cutoff or cut, and it'll be in here, fuel cutoff. The out version has a 0, the in version has a 1. So that's really simple to sort out. And the last one over this side here is the parking brake. And I want it to be pulled towards me by default. So when it starts, all switches down, the brake is on, and that's the brake off. Okay. So the parking brake is on, it's a 1 and it's on. And the off version, the parking brake off, has a 0 there. So that's really it. That's the entirety of that. The trickier one is this trim wheel here. If you just look straight away at the trim up and trim down, these are not Microsoft input events. They a bit more complicated to work with because it increments and decrements it. Well, it doesn't. If you need to use a script, you need to read the value and put your own increment into it, and it works in radians rather than degrees or anything like that. So it's a bit of pest to work with. So I'm just choosing to use it from the normal elevator group, and you've got the trim up and trim down, and I've just allocated that straight away. You see what it's working in 0.0005 of a radian, but it's put that in automatically, so we don't need to worry about it. So we'll just search that one down and put it in. So the trim up and trim down are actually two different commands. If we look at the trim down, that's a completely different command. The trouble with that is if you just use those, you're winding this wheel quite a lot to get it to actually respond, to actually do anything. It's very fine, but it's not very sensitive. So what I've done is I've created a fast version of the up and down. So it's the same command with the same figure in here, so 1, but this here has been altered so that if it detects I've done a fast turn, and I've said that a fast turn is anything anything greater than 100 milliseconds is the fast turn. You can play with this figure and you can play with this figure. They change the sensitivity. This one here is when it should detect that you've done a fast turn, and what this does is it actually issues this command 5 times, so it's 5 times faster than a normal turn. And we've done the same for the fast trim down. So it's the same fast trim down command, but there's the roll at 5 and the fast turn is 100 milliseconds. So what you should see is if I turn this slowly, let's go up. If I turn it slowly, you should see that only the trim up one triggers, but if I turn it a bit more quickly, the fast trim up should now trigger, and this is working 5 times faster by doing that. Then so I can do a quick gross change, but if I want to do a fine adjustment, I just turn the wheel slowly, and the same with the direction. If I want to go down quickly, if I turn that quite fast, you'll see it's moving down, and then you can do a fine adjustment like that. So that's how I've dealt with this the sensitivity problem that the yoke actually the throttle quadrant actually provides, and that works. It seems to work for me. I sort of fiddle with the sensitivity a little bit. It varies between different aircraft, to be honest, but you've only got 2 factors to change. It's either how many pulses you should give for each individual pulse, that's the kind of multiplier, and how sensitive you want this fast turn to be. Okay, so that's it for the template. So what you do then, once you've got that controlled in here, you just go and save the current setup as a template and give it a name. What I've called this one here, it's my Honeycomb throttle, and I put in here the mix and the fuel pump. This one here was for the 152, which hasn't got a fuel pump, but it has got a carb heat. So I've labelled that for myself, and then click save, and it's done. Okay, so the next video will be about putting all these templates together and giving it a test flight. So I'll see you in the next recording.